Dicite Dominus, and welcome to question 172 of the Secunda Secundae of St. Thomas Aquinas. The topic for this lecture is the causes of prophecy, and I am Dr. Thibault. So we are on the gifts of knowledge. So we've just looked at prophecy itself, and now we're looking at the causes of prophecy, then the mode, division, rapture. These are all questions revolving around knowledge and also prophecy. So if you're interested in the topic of prophecy, you really have to look at questions 171 through 175. So when we're looking at natural prophecy, right, there's a question, is there such thing as natural prophecy, or is all prophecy divine prophecy? St. Thomas points out that, in a manner of speaking, there is a sense of natural prophecy, right? Knowledge which we are foreseeing in the future, right? That you can kind of predict the future. Right? This can be done in various ways, right? Like a good economist, for example, is able to predict the market, right? They can predict what is going to go up in the future, what's going to go down in the future, and they invest wisely, right? Warren Buffett is an example of a good investor who is able to predict the market, right? See where the future is going. But he, as far as I know, is not directed by any type of divine prophecy, not any type of prophetic light. He's being guided by natural light, right? His knowledge of the stock market allows him to foresee where things are going naturally, right? Likewise, a good doctor is able to foresee how things were going, right? Every time you get a terminal illness, right? They'll say, well, this person has 6 months left to live, or 3 months left to live, or 2 weeks to live, right? 5 years to live, right? These are predictions of the future, again, not based off of divine light, not prophetic light, but natural light. Is this prophetic? No, right? This isn't what we're talking about when we're talking about prophecy. It's not about foreseeing these things, right? If you think of a lot of psychics, for example, right? You go to see a psychic and they go, there's somebody in the audience and they have the name J or S in their name, right? The two most common letters in English-speaking names, J and S. And it's somebody who has lost someone, right? People go see these psychics there often because they've lost a member of their family, right? Might have had to do with cancer or heart, something to do with the heart or cancer, right? Heart disease and cancer, the two most common ways in which people die, right? This is not prophecy. This is natural prophecy. In that case, it's a scam, right? In this way, we don't look at prophecy this way, right? In terms of habit, right, a doctor is able to see where disease is going and lifespan and things like this based on the habit of science, right? The habit of medicine, right? Maybe a brand new doctor might not know this, right? But an experienced doctor, based on years of experience and knowledge and seeing how, diseases progress, they have a habit where they are able to know where this is going, right? Warren Buffett has a habit of economics, right? Knowing where the markets are going. It's ingrained, right? It's like an alcoholic is drawn to alcohol, an economist is drawn to the economy, right? A doctor is drawn to medicine. It's something that persists within them, right? You just ask them, well, what do you think about this? Right off the cuff, they'll be able to come up with an answer which is more right than most of us would be because of their instincts, right, in science or economy or something like this. This is not what we're talking about again. And St. Thomas says the difference between this and prophecy, right? A prophet would be, prophecy is about is not about human knowledge, right? It's not about the economy. It's not about disease. It's about something deeper, right? There's a deeper spiritual element of the thing the prophet is predicting. Sometimes it's still, like Joseph, the interpreter of dreams, might be there will be a famine, right? Kind of a Warren Buffett type of prediction. But it is about a deeper spiritual meaning behind it, right? It's not really about the famine. It's about returning to God, right? There's a deeper spiritual meaning behind all prophecy. Now, is prophecy from the angels, right? He doesn't say all prophecy or some prophecy, but is prophecy from the angels? And what St. Thomas points to, he says, all things that are of God are well ordered, right? Taking that from the letter to the Romans, right? In God there is a hierarchy and an ordering of things towards the good, right? And in the ordering of things to the good, lower things are ordered to middle things, and middle things are ordered to higher things, right? Right. The good of our body goes to the good of our soul. The good of our soul is enacted to the good of our family. The good of our family acts to the good of the parish. The good of the parish acts to the good of the diocese. The diocese acts to the good of the church, and the church is to the goodness of God, right? So by taking care of my body, I am ultimately glorifying God, right? In the hierarchy of the ordering of the goods, right? And it's the proper ordering which determines these things. Right, so if this is true, then what is the middle things? St. Thomas says the angels are the middle things, right? God is the highest things, and we are kind of the lowest things, but the angels are the middle things. So God uses the angels to communicate, God at the highest uses angels to communicate us at the lower end. Right? Well, why angels, right? Why? Well, angels are the messengers of God, right? Angelos means messenger, right? So if human beings, the prophet, has received a message from God, right? Sees the message of God, and then repeats it, foretells it, right? This is going back to section 171. Well, where is that message coming from to human beings? Well, from the messenger, which just is an angel, right? So, right, comes from God to humans through the means of a messenger, which is an angel, right? The message gets repeated by a messenger, right? It's kind of an intermediary, but not really. It's the direct message. St. Thomas says, the divine enlightenments and revelations are conveyed from God to men by the angels. Right? This is how it works. Charity, he also says, charity which makes man a friend of God is a perfection of the will in which God alone can form an impression, whereas prophecy is a perfection of the intellect in which the angel also can form an impression, right? This is from response to objection 1. And I think I included it because I thought it gave us some insights into prophecy in general. So charity, God speaks to our heart directly through a perfection of the will, right? Because of charity. Because charity is in the will. But prophecy is in the intellect, right? It's in the mind. It's not in the doing, it's in the knowing, right? It's a knowledge. Knowledge is in the mind in terms of the intellect. Therefore, there are many things which give form in the intellect, right? Prophecy, he says, is a perfection of the intellect. Now, I think that's an important line, right, in terms of understanding these things. We talk about intellect and will all the time. the perfection of the will, charity, okay? The perfection of the mind, the intellect, prophecy. That's that's an important insight, right? Right? The idea that the charity is the perfection of the will is a very important insight. But then the idea that prophecy, the perfection of the intellect, is interesting too, because it means the perfection of the intellect is knowing this divine knowledge which has been passed on, right? There's these insights in the intellect, right? About the past, the present, and the future, right? It's in some sense the intellect uniting itself with the will of God, but as we pointed out in question 171, it comes directly from God. This is not human beings doing, this is God's doing, right? But God perfecting the intellect of the prophet. Right? But then angel could also give the impression on as well, because we're dealing with the intellect. Now, what is the proper disposition for a person to be a prophet, right? Can a person be sinful? Does the person have to be holy, right? What type of disposition, do you have to have a good disposition to be a prophet? And this, St. Thomas says, no, you don't have to have a good disposition to be a prophet. He says, prophecy requires no previous disposition, but depends on the will alone of the Holy Ghost, right? So God alone picks who will be a prophet. You don't have to be overly good to do it, right? It kind of gives an impression of like Noah was supposed to be much better than the rest of this sinful, terrible world, but Noah really wasn't that good himself, right? First thing he does when they get to the land and they offer the sacrifices, and then he gets drunk and he sees his son, right? This is not sees his son naked. This is not a perfect person, right? But God can choose an imperfect person. Right? This is the story of the scriptures, right? He writes, he is able to, at the same time, by creation, to produce the subject so as to dispose the soul for prophecy and give it the prophetic grace at the very instant of its creation. Right? So this is another insight into it. So does a person need perfect disposition to be a prophet? He says no. But in some ways, yes. Right? In some ways, since the prophetic message is infused in the mind, it's formed in the mind of the prophet by God directly. Well, the mind has to be fit for that, right? For God to form his message in the mind of the prophet, there needs to be some type of formation, but God can give that disposition in an instant, right? God can do it through the prophetic graces, put the mind in order. So a person didn't have to be perfect to begin with, but God will make them perfect in the intellect for the purpose of being a prophet. And an example is, God chose an amateur harpist, and he made him the author of the Psalms. God chose a shepherd, and he made him the leader of his people, the king of his people. Right? Talking about King David here. So in these examples, David may not have had the disposition as a musician or as a leader, but the moment that God chooses him to be the psalmist and the leader, he provides the grace for him to do it. Right? It's not that there's a predisposition, but then once you have been chosen, God then creates the disposition. Right? Now, do you have to live the good life to be a prophet, right? Do you have to live a virtuous life to be a prophet? And St. Thomas again points out that, this is all from God. This is not your own doing, right? I could say, I pray all day, I do my rosary, I read the scriptures, I volunteer, I help the poor. Why am I not a prophet, right? Why am I not a prophet like David or Padre Pio? Because God picks who God wants, and he picks them for a purpose, for a reason. And this is not, you cannot earn the position of prophet. You don't claim a position as prophet. You see this sometimes in the Pentecostal churches, this person, I'm a prophet and I'm an apostle, right? Everybody has they blame the Catholics for having too many titles, and then they have their own titles, but even more bold in some ways, right? Saying, oh, I'm a prophet. Well, maybe, right? In some sense, we're all prophets, but in some other ways, not really, right? So St. Thomas, he points out, just like with other forms of grace, there's an inward root, like sanctifying grace, and an inward passion, which reveals itself to outward actions of charity, right? There are people who have sanctifying grace, right? They have faith, but they haven't committed a mortal sin, but they're also not that loving, right? They're kind of... right? They're not, they're not Mother Teresa, but they do have faith, right? They have faith, they have sanctifying grace, but they don't really have the inward disposition of charity, leading to external acts of charity, right? So there can be a division here between sanctifying grace and charity. St. Thomas calls this dead faith, right? Type of dead faith. Go back to the beginning of the secundae on the topic of faith, the first section. You'll see this, right? There's a dead faith, which is just faith, and then there's living faith, which would be faith turned into outward acts of charity, right? Faith is internal. Once it becomes external, an act of faith is charity, right? And so this is the perfection of it, but you can still have an imperfect faith, which is just faith, right? Imperfect. Likewise, with prophecy, this can be true as well in terms of the good life, right? Now, a person to be a prophet, they probably need sanctifying grace, right? They need to probably be saved. St. Thomas doesn't say it specifically, but it seems like that's what he's suggesting. You do have to be saved. Do you have to have perfect charity, though? And he says, no, not really. You don't need to have perfect charity for God to use you as a prophet. It says, pertains to the intellect and not to the will, right? So charity is in the will. The charity is in the will. It's in the action, right? The will. Prophecy is in the intellect. So just like sanctifying grace, faith is in the intellect, charity is in the will. So similarly, prophecy is in the intellect, not in the will. So could you be doing uncharitable things, right? Or non-charitable things, right? You're not doing charity. Well, you can still have faith and not do charitable things. You can still then be a prophet and not do charitable things, right? It's the will intellect divide, right? Ideally, they should be united together towards the good, right? That's the perfection, but there is sometimes the imperfect, right? He says that, and secondly, prophecy is not for the sake of the prophet. Prophecy is for the sake of the church, right? What is the ends of prophecy? To edify the church, right? To build up the church. Right? In that regard, right? If you've been saved, right? Sanctifying grace, you're not that great of a person. God can still use you for the good of the church, right? You don't have to be a saint in order for God to use you to sanctify the church, right? Because it's not ultimately about you. It's not about the messenger. It's about the message which comes from God, who is good. Right? That's the important thing. Sorry if that's confusing. And here's a great quote as well. For prophecy requires the mind to be raised very high in order to contemplate spiritual things. And this is hindered by strong passions and an inordinate pursuit of external things. This is where St. Thomas then says, right, you do not need to be perfect for God to use you to be a prophet. However, on the other hand, if you are obsessed with material things, right, if you're obsessed with food, with drink, with sex, right, then you might not, your intellect, right, might not be able to contemplate the divine message, right, the prophetic message. You have to have a certain openness to the divine message and a willingness to say the message for it to be effective, right? Let's say the person is just sitting in their basement playing video games all day long, drinking Red Bulls and eating junk food. Right? If God has chosen the person to be a prophet, he has put the message into the mind of the gamer, and the gamer never repeats the message, right? He'll do it tomorrow or the next day. He'll get around to it, right? Not quite sure. I'm just gonna finish this game and then I'll do it, right? This might not be the right prophet, right? You could, ideally the person who is open to the mind of God is more likely to be a better prophet, but it doesn't mean that God cannot use that person. Okay, we're approaching the end now. Prophecy from the demons, right? Can the demons prophesize? And this is an interesting question that I don't think most of us would ask. Can the demons be prophets? And St. Thomas says, yes, the demons can be prophets. Well, how? Okay. It says the demons, even in their natural knowledge, know certain things remote to men's knowledge. Right? So that's an element of prophecy, right? Prophecy is not knowledge, which is natural to men, right? Well, angels, by their own natural knowledge, the natural knowledge of angels is superior to the natural knowledge of men. So just angels, by their very nature, know more than men do, right? For example, they might know more about the creation of the earth, right? The creation of the heavens and the earth. They might know more about divine judgment, right? They might know more about sin and about salvation than we do, right? We only know what's been revealed to us. The angels may have seen more than we have seen. So in that regard, they have more. If they tell us what they know, and it's truthful, then it's prophetic. It's not prophetic for them, but it's prophetic for us, right? It says, although those things which God alone knows are remote, simply, and most of all, right? There's things that the angels do not know. There's things that the demons do not know. Only God knows. But again, there are things that the demons and the angels know that we do not know, which would then technically make it prophecy. Another example of this, and this ties into the next article, is, when Jesus is traveling through Judea, and he comes across a demoniac at one point. The demon that he expels out of the man yells, "What do you have to do with us, Son of God?" Right? In some ways, the demon has revealed that Jesus is the Son of God. Right? This is not knowledge which comes from natural knowledge. Right? It's questionable in chapter 8 of Matthew whether the apostles have even really understood that Jesus is the Son of God. They still seem to be a bit confused by the whole thing, right? the demon seems to have more greater clarity about the true nature of Jesus, and the angel, the angel sees the knowledge and has transmitted the knowledge to people, right, and to Jesus. In that sense, the demon was a prophet, right? So there are prophetic demons, right? But you can't really ask that question without Article 6, which is, are demons able to tell the truth, or do demons tell the truth in their prophecy? Well, in that example I just gave from Matthew 8, yes. What do you have to do with us, Jesus, the Son of God, right? Well, first half is a question, so it's neither true nor false. But the second half is true, right? Jesus, the Son of God, right? This is a true statement. So demons can sometimes prophesize the truth. Now, that is not in their nature it's in their angelic nature to tell the truth, but it is not in their corrupted nature to tell the truth, right? In their actions. The devil is... here we go. The devil is allowed sometimes to speak the truth, speak true things in order that his unwanted truthfulness may gain credit for his lie. Now, this is a line from St. Thomas. Right? The devil sometimes tell the truths in order to get you to believe them, right? And this is true in this next line too. Now, in things it is impossible to find one that is wholly devoid of good. Wherefore, it is also impossible for any knowledge to be wholly false without some mixture of truth, right? If a demon only spoke full falsehoods, it wouldn't be very effective, right? It wouldn't be very useful. So if we think of, this is just a pop culture example, in the movie The Exorcist, the main priest, Father Damien, right, he's very conflicted about being a priest for many reasons, but one of it is that nobody's there to take care of his mother, and that he has essentially abandoned his mother, right? And if he had not been a priest, he could be there for her, but as a Jesuit, he could not be there for his mother. So when his mother dies, the demon uses his guilt for his neglect of his mother against him, right? So he gets a phone call and she's saying, I'm alone, I'm sad, where are you? You know, he's using some truth, right? That is one, that his mother feels very alone, to the guilt that he has for not being there for his mother, right? He's using true things to do damage, right? To do damage. And the demon has revealed to him that his mother has died even before the natural knowledge that he had been told that his mother died, right? So it was a prophetic message to Father Damien, right? That his mother had died. So, all right. Again, most people, when they lie, you have to say some truth, right? If you just lie, and 100% of everything you say is wrong, nobody would believe anything, right? It's not a very effective lie. Lies are most effective, especially for a father of lies, when it's commingled with some truth, right? If you want to poison somebody, you just don't give somebody a glass of poison. You mix it in with some wine, right? As an example, you mix it in with a sweet dessert, right? So the person voluntarily consumes it and keeps consuming it, right? If you just put a block of poison on the table, people won't eat it, right? So this is the nature of the demons. Okay, so that is it for question 172. Prophecy is not natural, right? There's things that are like natural prophecy, but this isn't truly prophecy, because prophecy is about knowledge unknown to mankind, right? And this is different, right? Prophecy comes from the angels in some sense. Does he need the angels? Maybe not. St. Thomas isn't saying that all prophecy always comes from angels, but angels are messengers of God, and since the mind is infused with the message of God, it makes sense that it comes from an angel, right? In the proper ordering of things. Prophecy does not require a good disposition. A prophet does not have to be holy for God to choose the prophet, right? Because the message is not coming from the prophet's own holiness, it's coming from God to be transmitted for the good of the church, not for the good of the prophet. Is the good life required? Again, no. Although if you have a poor disposition, you're not living a good life, you might not be open to the contemplation which comes into the divine, that comes into your will, right? So if God has put a message on your intellect, on your mind, you need to be able to contemplate that message in order to repeat it, right? If you are so addicted to sin, you might not contemplate, right? Or your mind is so numbed, if your mind is so numb to the intellect, so obsessed with lust. Going back to question 171, you have been obsessed with lust, right? All you do is watch pornography all day. Well, you might not be thinking about anything. Or never mind the divine, but you're not thinking about anything, right? You have become living in the flesh, right? You've become flesh-driven. Now, can demons prophesize? Yes, right? They have. Because some of their natural knowledge is greater than our natural knowledge as human beings. Therefore, if they just say something they know, it might be more than anything we could know, right? Because they existed before us and outside of time, right? So demons sometimes prophesize the truth as well, right? The demon who says, Jesus, Son of God, right, is prophesizing the truth, because no lie is very effective unless it's commingled with the truth. Okay, so that is it. And next we'll be moving on to more gift of knowledge and prophecy. So stay tuned.